Right then, the first thing I want to do with our build of this Admiral's Royal Barge is to get some primer down to see if there's any cleanup needed to be done that I can't really see on the grey 3D print. It looks like the only tidy up is really here, but it's good to be sure, and if we don't, we're then ahead ready for the painting. So I want to prime the lower part of the hull in white because it's going to have a white lower hull. I'm also going to prime the inside up to about here in the white as well, because that's going to get painted in wood colours, and a white primer will be the best backdrop for that. And then I'm going to use a gloss black primer for this point sort of upwards, the top rail and the top couple of plank layers all the way around. So I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's only a primer, but it allows us to get a shiny black primer down to help get a little bit of reflectiveness behind the gold paint that we're going to be putting on this. So that's the plan, two-stage primer. So we're going to start with the white because it makes it easy for the colour change in the airbrush. So the airbrush we're going to be using today is the Mobius TG, which has a 0.5 needle. This is a fairly new airbrush on the market, and you can get you can see my review of this, which I did a few days back. So there we go. I'm going to get some primer thinned, and then away we go. So as I'm airbrushing with this, with the Mac closed up and the stop on, I'm able to get some real control here, and even though this airbrush is designed for doing sort of wider spray patterns and volume of paint, I've been able to do quite a controlled paint job here and just lay it down in the area that I want. So just a quick recap before we move forward again. 3D printed hull, we primed in white initially at the bottom and then a gloss black along the top, which was the precursor to spraying down our gold, which has gone down really nicely. And I'm now at the point of choosing colours and finishes. The intention with the base is to leave the base wood. It looks really nice, so why not? So what I've done is I've polished this up with sanding sticks, and we've gone down as far as a 7000 grit, and this is now as smooth as glass. We've taken all the scoring, all the burning off, and it looks really good. So I still want to give it some form of clear coat,
but I quite like it as it is, with this sort of semi-matte finish that we've achieved just with sanding sticks. So I'm in between on what I'm going to do with that. With the uprights, these have also been sanded, but they've only gone down to 800 grit, because I intend to paint them, and as soon as we paint them, the grain is going to open up, and then we're going to have to sand again. My intention is to paint these black, and then we can put a little bit of red felt just on the inside here, which always looks really nice against the black. It will cushion the hull. If we don't put it in here, we can glue the hull into place on the stand at this point here, and it'll also close up any gaps between the hull and the stand, and it should look pretty cool. So that's my plan with that. But we've also got other bits of wood that we're gonna leave wood, and I'm gonna want to varnish them. So what I'm gonna do is have a little bit of a play with some products. So let me move this out of the way. So I want to try some different varnishes. So these are all varnishes I've used before on wood, but I've never done it on pear, so I want to see how it behaves and what happens to the colour when you put this on. So we've got an acrylic gloss varnish from Gaahleri, which I've used on wood on a plastic model ship, so I've only used in small quantities. And it deepened the colour, so it was on chestnut I used it, making lockers for the Queen Mary 2. So I want to give that a good try. Then I've got a Vallejo gloss acrylic varnish, which I have used before on wood and works well. And I've also got this polyurethane satin varnish. I just want to compare the two. Usually with the glosses on wood, you've got to build it up with several coats to get sort of a high shine. We're after really a high shine, but I just want to understand how this behaves as well, because we've got things like the oars to consider. Whilst I'm doing it, I'm also going to try some wood dye out with the view to possibly darkening the seats, because it's actually quite pale even compared to the usual pear. You can see it's quite pale, so I'm thinking of darkening the seat. We could even possibly darken the deck, though I'm not sure about that. But generally, when you look at these things, the wood is a little bit darker when you see them in museums or images of ones preserved in museums. So this is also a precursor to another build that I'll be doing soon, and I wanted to have a play with this. So the colour is earth, but it's basically just darker brown, you know. And then finally, I want to apply a little bit of this. So this is another acrylic, but it's a lacquer this time, and it's designed to be used over things like stains and stuff like that, and we can build up layers of this to get a varnish. So I just want to try them all. We've got a great little piece to work on. We've got all of this. That's why you don't throw these sort of bits away, big pieces like this, because they're handy for this. So I'm just going to put a bit down with a brush of all of these and see how they behave and what happens, and then we'll have a look. But to make sure I don't forget which one is which, we're just going to write them down in order and rule them off. that should do it. So we'll have Vallejo gloss. There. If we put the satin next to it, then we get an understanding of the difference. And then we'll have the Gaahleri. Then we can have the chestnut. And then we can have the earth. So that relates to that. I now know what I'm doing and I won't forget what is what. Right, get the idea. I'll show you what the results are when they come in. So this is 2-3 hours later, I'm not sure now, and the results are really interesting. The best gloss has come down from the Vallejo gloss, the acrylic gloss, which is, you can see in the light, is the most shiniest, but also has left the most witness of brushing and stuff. Now you can water that down, so watered down you wouldn't get that. I've put it on neat here. The Vallejo satin has done really quite nicely as a seal for like decks. It doesn't really change the colour that much, it's just darkened it by hue, but it has opened up the grain. Well, both of them did. The acrylic from Winsor & Newton, that's brought out the grain the worst. It's made it really rough, so you'd have to sand it and then coat it again. And that's actually made quite a nice colour. It's darkened it without changing it. As probably I would have expected, you'd argue the best performing was the chestnut acrylic lacquer, and that hasn't really changed the wood colour at all. But you're going to need several coats to get it to a shine. And then the earth dye, well, that's created a really nice colour. It looks darker on camera than it actually is. I've done a little sanding test here and I've been able to sand it back as well, so that's really good. 'Cause that's good for what I want it for on my next build. And here we've put, I think it's now 3 coats of the Vallejo gloss acrylic varnish over that, and that is coming up really nice, and it darkens the colour and gets me exactly where I want. So yeah, very, very interesting. We can use all of this information to our advantage now to get different effects with the pear wood. So yeah, that was, you know, it just took a couple of minutes to do all this really, and then you leave it to dry. So you know, it's worth doing it and understanding how you can manipulate the wood and subtly change the image, especially when you've got a kit that's all been made largely out of the same wood. Allows you to get some different finishes, and it's amazing what you can do just with clear coats. So that's that. The next thing we need to do is think about the colours for the Royal Barge, and this is sort of where I'm at. I've got this gloss blue, which is an acrylic from Humbrol, but it's a really nice dark shade of royal blue. Or I've got this dark blue from ICM, which is not quite as regal a colour, to be honest, but we could get away with it. We might be able to darken it a little bit. Then for the interior, I've got this gloss 20, which seems to be okay. So we can thin that down, and that's going to do most of our interior, I think. And then I've got a gloss white enamel, which we're going to use for the oar handles. So yeah, the oars are probably the most complicated bit we've got to do. If I just talk you through the oar, let me just grab one. So we've got to sand this smooth and then slightly bevel the edges and the end to make like a blade. Then we've got to round off these corners so you almost get a circular shaft, and then paint that white. This section needs the corners rounding off as well. It doesn't have to be completely circular, that one. And that will be left in the natural wood colour. And then I can either leave the very tip in the natural wood colour, or I can paint it white. And I'm sort of thinking it'll look quite nice white. So you'd end up with natural wood, white, natural wood, white. So yeah, as they are currently, they're too thick to actually go into the openings for the oars. So by the time we've rounded all this off, I'm hoping that we'll have remedied that. So yeah, quite a bit of work to do on the oars. So when you consider how many oars you've got, let's just count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, is it? 11, 12 oars. So yeah. Right, so let's crack on and get ready for the next painting step. Before we can paint the inside in our deep royal red colour, we've got a couple of wooden parts we need to install. So we've got this part here which goes at the front. I want and it's the support for this section of deck, but I don't want to paint the inside with that bit of decking, but we can put that in and then that can get painted. We've also got these to do. Now you only need 2 of them, so the other 2 must be spares because they are quite delicate. So first thing we need to do is just sand them a bit smoother. So I'm going to do that. I'm using a 600 grit, and I'm just going to go with the grain initially. And then we're going to flip it over and go in the direction of the grain on this side as well. Although I guess I actually only need to do one side, don't I? So that's a waste of time. And then I'm going to go against the grain as well. And by doing it before you take the part out, you're not rounding the edges off as you're sanding. So we are ready to cut them out and we can glue those in now. So I've been looking at this and I've actually changed my mind as to putting the wooden fittings in first. We're gonna crack on with getting the painting done, I think, of the interior, because I'm in 2 minds as to whether I'm leaving these wood, or I'm gonna leave them as stained wood, or whether I'm gonna paint them. So because I can't make my mind up, we're going to get this painted and then we can always paint them in later on. So first job is to get the paint sorted. So for the interior, I think we're going to go with this gloss 20. So I'm going to give it a mix up and remind myself what this looks like. But it seems to be quite a close match to a colour that's been used in several barges that I've looked at. So it sort of makes sense. Haven't used this for a while, so it'll need to be brought back to life, and then we'll have to thin it, and we're going to brush paint this. So I have thinned my paint and we're gonna get going with this and see how it comes out. I'm using a fine brush to start with, and then when we're doing some of the bigger areas I can go in with a change of brush. So this is going to need at least 2 coats, but the plan is to paint around all these panels because the centre of the panels are going to be a different colour, and you can see on the black it's going to be quite a rich colour. So we'll see what it's like after 1 coat and then make a decision on whether the second coat is the same or it gets lightened up or whatever we're going to do. And I've also got to think about the top rail there. Do I want to have that a different colour or the same colour? My gut feel is it should be the same colour actually. Leaving the gold on the outside edge. Yeah. So there you go. That's our colour. You can see it looks lighter on the white than it does on the black. So we're going to get that down and see how it ends up. So I'm sort of doing single coats of everything and blocking in the colours, sort of to sense check what I'm choosing, to be honest. So we've put a single coat of the purpley red down. So it definitely needs a second coat, but I'm not doing that just yet. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prep the hull to be painted wood. So this is going to be given a full wood effect, and the base for that is going to be light wood, and then we'll sort of build up layers on that. Now if you've seen me do this before, you've got an idea of what's coming. If you haven't, I do wood effects slightly different than what you may well have seen other people show you, using oils and waiting for 3 days for it to dry and all that sort of well, it's not nonsense, but it's stuff you could do without, really. So we're going to do without it, and we will do a process that's much easier and quicker to dry, and we can get a nice looking colour and effect. Now I want this to be a nice sort of not quite a dark wood, but a rich orangey red type wood. So the basis of which doesn't really matter. Now strangely, new wood is a slightly darker colour, sorry, not quite a darker colour as the light wood. A bit odd, So I'm using the light wood because it's slightly darker and it's got a slightly more sort of yellow tint to it, which is sort of what I'm looking for a base, because we're going to put some quite dark colours on top for the wood grain effect. What I haven't decided in my mind is whether I'm going to do the wood graining with a sponge, which is what I've done in the past, or whether I'm going to do it with a brush, which I've also done in the past, because we've got individual planks here, and if you do it as a sponge, it'll look too uniform. You need each plank to look slightly different, I think, anyway. So because I've got this overspray of black primer, we may well have to do 2 coats of the wood. Now you notice that I didn't thin it down, I'm just using it straight from the bottle. That's fine. It doesn't really matter because we're going to be putting a wood grain effect on. Any brush strokes just build into that. Now we have to be a bit more careful as we get to this top edge. And I did ponder how far up I was going with the wood. So where I am now, I had considered doing that plank a different colour, a painted colour, and at one point that was going to be green, but actually my plan now is to make that wood and use the raised border to highlight just one plank coloured in. You could definitely do 2 if you wanted, but we're just going to go with that one. And all I'm doing with this build is picking it up every now and then when I've got nothing to do or can't do anything on another build, and doing a bit. So there's several days, I mean it's probably about a week since I put the red down, and I haven't done anything more with it. The other thing we have to consider is, what are we going to do with the rudder? Are we going to paint wood effect onto the wood? Are we going to paint the whole thing a colour? What are we going to do? Got to be honest, haven't really decided yet. Nor have I decided what we're doing with the transom, but we ain't getting in there with this brush. Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to finish the rest of this, the other side, and give it a second coat off camera. Putting the first coat of the blue down, partly to check that I'm happy with the colour, and if I am, then that's great, we've got first coat down, and also it's just proving to me that the blue is going to work with all this lovely gold scroll work, and I won't really know until I've got a little bit of it done. It's going to be a little bit time consuming. I've got my paint nice and thin so that I'm putting this in with a dropping action and just sort of dabbing it in. If we build up around the edge there. Once we've got sort of one little section done, I'll be able to take a view And if we do get any paint on the gold, we can touch that up easy enough. You have to be clear in your mind what is going to be blue and what is going to be gold. I think that's going to work quite nice though. Quite happy with that. It's going to take 2 or 3 coats though to build this up. I also want blue in these little boxes, so let's have a go at that. This is going to be harder, I'm sure. Just going to go in with a little Q-tip and take that away a little bit. I think that's going to look gorgeous when it's done. I'm not convinced this is the right blue though. I've been using the Admiralty French blue, and I think of the 3 blues I've got, it's the nicest blue, but it's not going down very well. We'll see what the second coat's like. Right then, the next step in preparing the hull to be painted to look like wood is to seal it. So it's been about 2 days since I put this paint down, and I'm going to seal it with A-stand acrylic varnish, which is a clear gloss, and we're just going to brush it on. You could airbrush it, but I've had great results brushing it before now. You do have to be careful with it. You don't shake it up or anything. If you shake it up, it turns it matte or satin, depending on how much shake you've had. So you do have to be careful with it. So simply, nice soft flat brush. This is a number 4, and we're just simply going to run it along nice and slowly. If you dab it around and do it quickly, you get bubbles, and we don't really want the bubbles. There we go. This dries with a nice hard shell, and it means that we'll be able to put our next coat down, which is the oils, with no issues at all. It's gonna do the stern area here. We mustn't forget to do the underside as well. There we go. I've got a few little bubbles just at the end there. There's a little bit of surface unevenness just as you get to the bow, so just have to be careful with that. I can see it's already starting to dry here, so yeah. Now just a reminder, we've only put first coats down on all the colours so far, because we're sort of testing how they work together and if they work together, and I'm happy to say they do. Just checking it in the light, make sure I've not missed any areas. Yeah, no, that's all fine. So we'll do the keel now. There we go. Right, I'll do the other side off camera. You get the idea. We're sealing it with gloss varnish ahead of using our next lot of paints, which will add the wood grain. Right, some of you will have seen me do this before when we built the 1:32 scale Wingnut Wings Gota seaplane. We did quite a lot of painting of wood. Some of you may not have seen me do this before, so I'm going to very quickly take you through the whole process, and then we'll get on with actually doing the wood graining, which is the next step here. So the process of creating a wood effect takes several layers. I do it slightly differently than a lot of people. It works for me, and people that have seen me do it and then tried it themselves have found that it's worked for them as well. So I only do something slightly different, to be honest, but it has quite a big impact on the overall finish. So with all wood effects, I start with a white primer. Then we put down some form of pale wood colour. In this instance we've used light wood, but we could use new wood or something similar. If you're going for a light wood effect at the end, then use a lighter one. If you're going for a darker wood effect at the end, use a darker one, is the basic principle. So I've used sort of in the middle of that. You've got to bear in mind, if you're doing dark wood, you're going to do darker wood grains, which will give you a darker impression overall anyway. So then we put the wood grain on. We'll talk more about that in a sec. Then we tint it. So we use either crystal orange, which is basically clear orange, or clear red, or a mix of the two to give us an overall wood hue, and then that completes it. Now between each one of those stages we are sealing everything with a clear varnish, usually a gloss one, and then that's building up the luster as well as you go. So where we are is we've put the base light wood colour down, and it's been sealed with a varnish. I used the A-stand acrylic varnish, single pass with a brush. You've seen me do that. So the next stage is to put the wood grain on. Now with this we're going to use a sponge, which is my preferred method. I do sometimes use a brush. If you're going to use a brush, then you want something like this stippling brush, which has got quite wiry bristles that are spread out a little bit, because that will help you with getting that effect of wood grain. But I'm going to use a sponge, so I need to cut this sponge to help me get the sort of shapes that I want. So with this sharp point now, I can get in and go sideways and do individual planks, which is my plan here. My plan is to do individual planks. Now usually people use tube oil paints for this. They take a long long time to dry. They have the advantage of giving you lots of manipulation time. I'm still going to use oil paints, but I'm not going to use tube oil paints. I'm going to use these oil brushes. They're a MIG ammo product, and basically, if you've not come across them before, they are an oil paint, and they come with a brush applicator, and they dry much more quickly. And in fact, we can actually seal these. We can airbrush over it with some of this and seal what we've done in before this is dried. No problem at all. So you can do this. You can put your application on. Once you're happy with the wood graining, you can then seal it, and then you're reducing your drying time to the drying time of the acrylic varnish, which is somewhere around half an hour for touch dry, couple of hours, well, 1 to 2 hours tops for being able to work on it again. So this massively speeds up your process by 2 to 3 days. So definitely worth doing the brushes. Now, there's all sorts of colours that I use. So we've got ochre, which is great for a lighter wood. We've got red brown, which we'll be using. This is a streaking brusher, has a slightly smaller brush, and but that's not a problem when you see the technique. So we're going to be using that red brown. I've got dark brown, which we're going to be using. I've got earth, which I'm not planning on using, but we might. So I'll put that to one side, and then dark mud, which we'll use a little bit of as well. So it's very simple, this technique. I'm going to do one plank at a time, but we don't have to apply this one plank at a time. We can put this all over and then just do the effect one plank at a time. And basically what we're going to do is get the sponge and drag it, and because it's got an uneven surface, it's going to create that grain effect for us. And we can put shakes and weaves in. You can even put knots in. I'm not going to be putting knots in because I'm guessing the best wood would have been used for a barge that the king might have got in. So so we're not going to have any knots or anything like that. And if you are interested in how to do knots, then go and have a look at my go to build playlist, and it's in the early stages of that when we're doing lots of that. So what we're going to do, give this a good shake, and we're going to get this on. Now, again, this is a slightly different process than you might have seen before. We're simply going to put dots on. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us different amounts of paint in different areas. So as we drag across, we'll have thick, we'll have thin, and it will give you that impression of wood grain, because wood grain isn't even when you look at it. Okay. The trick is to not be even, and that doesn't come naturally to me. You can see that it's quite evenly spaced out. Right, so we can now build up our colours, and you put more or less of whatever you want on. So I want more of this sort of red-brown colour, because this is going to help with darkening, but it's also going to add some colour to the whole wood. So where we've got some big spaces, we can now fill those gaps. And the great thing about this, because it's an oil paint, a little bit of white spirit, and we can remove it. So if we don't like it, we can take the whole thing off. We can thin it down, we can do all this sort of stuff. And because we've put an acrylic varnish down, putting white spirit on here ain't going to affect anything. So right, and then lastly, because you never have just a simple sort of wood effect, I'm going to put a little bit of the dark brown in, but not too much. Okay, we are now ready. So you don't have to rush, because this, the drying time for this is fairly slow. So we're just going to start dragging it across. Okay, where we've got this board here, want that in a different direction. And now I want to pick out the planks individually, so I'm just going to turn this round and pay a bit more attention to the planks on an individual basis. Make sure that we've not got any gaps. And you can see I can put waves in. I don't particularly want waves, but I can. I have done in the past. That's great for going round knots. The more times you pass over it, the lighter it gets. There you go. So it's nothing to be scared of. It's an easy process. So what you can do, if you want, you can go in with a brush and you can manipulate things. So I'm just taking down some of the really dark areas with the brush, which is lifting that off. And then you can see I can just go in I want to just put a bit of shape in some places now. Make sure you've got no blank spaces. Where you can only see the natural wood, so you want to get right under this gold here. Don't worry, we'll touch up the gold. And there we go. That's all there is to it. Now, you can keep on attacking this until you've got the effect that you want. So I'm just going to go over it with my critical eye and do some adjusting. It's good to turn it the other way around and see what it looks like the way it would do. I mean, it's easier to apply it upside down, but now we want to just say, right, what does this look like? Does it look right? Now, this will have this, I'm going to do a mix of red and orange for this. So it'll have a richer reddy orange luster over the top. So you've got to bear that in mind when we're looking at it. So I think I've got a little spot there. But yeah, that's it. That's all there is to it. I think that looks pretty cool. I'm happy with that. So we'll let that dry. And I'm going to crack on and do the other side now. So I'll do that off camera because you know how that works. Okay, so I have mixed the clear red and yellow together, and that gives me this colour here. It's roughly 1 part red to 2 part yellow, but I eyeballed it, so you end up looking for a colour that looks about right. So I'm just going to shove that in my Mobius 2. So for those of you not familiar with Gaahleri Airbrushes, that's a 0.2 needle. And I've got my smallest paint cup in because we're only putting a dribble in really. And then what we do is we coat the hull. And hopefully it'll give it a nice tint. So let's see how we get on. Let's just check that it's working first. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm going to just do the other side. We've just run out. Right, you get the idea anyway. Well, I've completed the wooden element of the hull. So just to take you back through the process and then explain the last little bit that you didn't see, we started off with a pale wood. We used MIG 0038 light wood as the first colour on top of a white primer. We then used the crystal orange, no we didn't, we then used the oil brushes of various different colours, the red, brown, earth and so on, and with a sponge did the wood grain effect. We then gave it a seal with a stand acrylic varnish. We then did the tinting using MIG crystal orange and crystal red mixed, which gives us this nice deep reddy brown colour. And then once that's dried, it's been given 2 coats of Vallejo gloss acrylic varnish, which are slightly watered down. If you put a couple of drops of water in it, I mean, I put about half a pallet's worth in surface area, and then a couple of drops of water and mixed it up, and then that way you can brush and it doesn't bubble. If you brush this straight from the pot, you get little air bubbles in it, and some of those can actually dry and leave a ring. But if you put a little bit of water in it, just thin it down a little bit, you can move it around a little bit more, you can get rid of all those bubbles, and it levels itself while it's drying. It's a bit like a an enamel paint. Adding the water actually slows down the drying time a little bit, and so it has time to even out, so you get no brush strokes, you don't get any bubbles, and you get an airbrush quality finish with a brush. So yeah, very nice. So anything that's not even in there is actually under the gloss, not part of the gloss. So yeah, I'm happy with the finish of that. So the next thing is to tackle the rest of the outer hull. So we've got to touch up the gold. I've got the blue to paint in on this side. And we've got the red to do at the back. And I'm thinking the red is probably the next thing I want to do. And then, because we'll use the blue on the edges to tidy that up. So let's do that. So we're using Humbrol 19 red, which is a gloss red. Last time I used this on the channel was on the ICM German fire tender from the 1940s, the Opel Blitz fire tender. So this paint's been used in the last couple of years, so shouldn't be too settled. You can hear by the strain on the motor that this is quite thick, which is great, which means, you know, we've got at least 2 pots worth in there, maybe more. That's fairly well mixed actually. Now we don't need too much. I'm a devil for putting too much paint in my palettes. We're only doing this tiny transom end, and there's a great big crown on it, so I won't need anywhere near the amount that I've just put out. But because it's slow drying, we can leave it in the palette and it'll probably do both the coats that we'll need. So we can start doing 2 coats now, whereas I've just been putting 1 coat down so far because, well, partly because I was testing, you know, just proving to myself that what I had in my head would actually work. I'm pleased to say it has. So now we can go back and do 2nd coats and finish it up ready for the building. There we go. I keep 2 jars actually for cleaning brushes and stuff with enamel. So this is just odourless white spirits. It's not completely odourless, but that's the claim. And that's for flat colours or non-metallics. And then I have another one just for metallics. And I change this one every year. So we let it settle, swap it into the next bottle so we don't take any particles, get rid of the bottle, have a fresh bottle. Whereas the metallic one, probably change it once every 4 or 5 years because I don't do metallics anywhere near as often. Right, okay. So, Humbrol enamel thinners. I put 3 drops in there. Let's get that thinned down so we can work with it. There we go, that's about right. So we'll clean the brush. I'm not going to use this brush for applying the paint. Now I have been asked to show in detail how I go around painting all of these little scroll details and what have you, the gold, elaborate gold details. How do I go around painting them? Well, the basic process is paint them, then paint around them, then touch them up, because you can easily get to the tops. It's the sides that's difficult. So we need a nice thin brush for this job. So I'm going to use this. It's a 10-0. Oh, look at the state of that brush. Am I going to use that? Yeah, it'll be fine. Just a bit bent, that's all. So as you can see, new brush, not been used before. So let's get our transom in view. I'm going to see how close I can get you in with the camera staying in focus. Right, it's going to focus on the paint, so you don't need to look at the paint, so let's get the paint out of the way. And the mat, that might cause a distraction as well. There we go. Can we get you in a bit more? Right, and if I hold my hand up near the top, there we go. So, what we're going to do is we're going to put a small amount of paint on and just put in a little small section at a time. I'm just going to get my hand rest and then we'll carry on, and I'm going to paint all of this on camera so you can see how it comes together. So my method of painting, as we just talked about, is to do the gold first. But then when you've got these little tiny little areas that you need to paint in between, the method is to just dab and have patience. I've just got to check that because I'm at slightly a wrong angle so that you can see it, and that means I can't see it so much. But I've got my magnifying glasses on, and what I'm basically doing is I'm just dropping the paint in near the edge. You'll notice the paint isn't too runny. Consistency is really important here. You want the paint to go where you put it and nowhere else. So you don't want it running around. So you don't want it too thin. At the same time, you don't want it too thick and it forms like a little mound of paint. So getting your paint right is critical, and that just comes with experience. But you can see what I'm doing is I'm just dabbing the paint. I'm not painting, moving the brush around. I'm just dabbing the paint in, leaving a deposit, taking the brush off. There you go. And it's as simple as that. And even here around the edges of the crown, when we're right up hard against the crown, that's what I'm doing. I'm just dabbing against it. And then when you're not up against the edge of the crown, that's when you can move paint around. But when you're close to the edge, just dab it in. Enamel paint, because it's a little slower drying, is more forgiving for this process because as it slowly dries, and it's not that slow really, half an hour and you touch dry, it's not that much slower than acrylics in reality. But once you've dabbed it, it'll slowly just even out a little bit. So any brush strokes and unevenness because you've dabbed the paint in will disappear. So there's a tendency to think you've got to paint in a straight line to even the paint out. It's not the case. Particularly with enamels. It's more problematic with acrylics. It's why I'm less of a fan of acrylics on the whole, because actually as a tool for modelers they're less flexible. And I know why people like acrylics. It's all to do with odour and what have you, but the new formulation of enamels is nowhere near as whiffy as the old formulation, and they're not as bad as lacquers. I mean, lacquers are terrible, and lots of people are using lacquers now and swearing by lacquers, and lots of people are actually using enamels by buying bought pre-made washers. They're all generally enamel because they're going on top of an acrylic, so it needs to be a different paint system. Right, this is the most tricky bit now. We've got this little cross on top of the orb. So again, just dabbing. It's because this is the end here, this transom bit, we talked about it earlier, it's not quite as flat, and so this detail is slightly soft. It's not quite as crisp as the rest of the mould detail. So there's part of me wonders whether it would have been possible to print the crown as a separate part that you then glued on. That would certainly have been easier for painting, but it's fine. So put the top in. I just need a little bit more paint around there. You can see a little bit of unevenness of colour, so I'll just dab that in and let it do its thing. So you can see how that's starting to come to life. It'll really pop in a moment when we do the other interior bit. Okay, first bit done. I hope everyone's holding their breath too. Really helps. Got a little bit on the gold there, but that's alright, we can touch that in. There we go, got that cross nice and crisp. Now this is going to need 2 coats, so don't go rushing in and touching up the gold until you've done both your coats. And even though this is a gloss paint and it has a really nice shine to it actually when it dries, we will still give it a gloss coat. We want the gold to really pop. Although when you look at these things in real life, actually the gilding is always a little bit more matte than the paintwork, which is all glossed up. So it could be that we gloss and then touch up. Don't know. Think it's likely we'll do the whole thing gloss just for practical ease. There we go. Sorry, I sometimes get out of shot. I don't realise I'm going out of shot. And when you're concentrating on this, my view screen is above me, so I have to look up. Right, so you get an understanding of what we're trying to achieve. I think that looks pretty good now. So the next thing is painting in the other red areas. So I've sort of decided that's the flat of the transom will also be red. And here we absolutely can brush the paint on. But we still have to be careful. Right, now then, where does the transom end and the plank start? There, decision made. So we carry that line down on this other side here very gently, and then go up. There's a sort of a demarcation point. It's slightly crisper on one side than the other when you're looking at it up close, but when you're not looking at it up close it all looks the same. And because we had black primer up at the top where we were doing the gold, the red will be a little dark, so the second coat will brighten that up a little bit. You can see how it looks so much brighter when we paint it on top of the gold there. There we go. Nearly got the transom done. Being very careful not to get any red paint on this hull, because that absolutely would be a disaster. Right, that is first coat of the red down. So we'll let that dry, and then we can do a second coat. So when I say let that dry, this will be ready for a second coat in about half an hour. When it's gone a little matter to the eye, you know you're about right. But yeah, pretty happy with that. Pretty happy with that.